All right, y'all can be seated. Thank you all for coming to support Cody Munoz at his oral presentation. I've had the pleasure of working with him in Algebra 2, and I say working with him because he's my senior assistant, but sometimes I'm assisting him. So we've had a blast this year, and I'm excited to see all that he can do for me because he's been working really hard on this, so you all are going to enjoy. I'm going to say a prayer, and then we'll get started. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for allowing us to come together and show support for Cody. Thank you for allowing this time this year to work with him. And I ask that you give him peace and the wisdom and discernment as he speaks and answers our questions today. I ask that you speak through him. You give him the words he wants to share with us. That you open our eyes and our hearts in order to hear his message that he has for us, but also that we can hear you with what he has to share with us. I ask all of this in your holy and precious name. Amen.
In the late 18th century France, a woman named Barbe Nicole Clicquot-Ponsardin was born. She was not pretty, and she did not enjoy going out. Because of this, her parents arranged for her to be married, and this marriage turned into something more than anyone could have ever imagined. Barbe Nicole and her husband were bound by a dream, and they were best friends. They had a dream of entering the French winemaking industry. They wanted to make champagne for people to drink when they had something to celebrate. Now, if you know anything about France in the late 18th century, they had no cause for celebration. Napoleon was in charge, and the nation was at constant battle. Barbe Nicole and her husband looked past this. They knew that immediate success was not going to happen. However, they pushed forward to their dream. They did the smart thing, and they took it slow. They got investments from their family members, and they pushed forward. 4 years into their dream, when Barbe Nicole was 27 years old, tragedy struck. Barbe Nicole's husband passed away and left her a widow. In this time, widows were expected to live a quiet life. They were expected to remarry and continue living as a wife. But Barbe Nicole was not going to do this. Her society wanted to push her down, so she rose up. Barbe Nicole was going to continue the industry on her own. Rather than rushing into the business world, she did the smart thing. She served a 4-year apprenticeship under the legendary winemaker Alexandre Fourneau. After this ended, she began, but this came with its fair share of failures. At one point, she lost over 50,000 bottles of wine to the sun's heat in Amsterdam. And at another point, she realized that she couldn't produce fast enough. She invented new ways of making wine, faster and better. When customers began to buy her wine, she continued to push forward towards this, but the people still had no cause for celebration. But after almost 10 years of bankruptcy, Napoleon abandoned the French throne. The people had cause for celebration, and they couldn't get their hands on Veuve Clicquot champagne fast enough. In a letter near the end of her life, she wrote to her great-grandchild, "The world is in perpetual motion, and we must invent the things of tomorrow. One must go before others, be determined and exacting, and let your intelligence direct your life. Act with audacity." Not only did she fail multiple times, but she lived in a society that wanted to push her down. Barbe Nicole continued learning from her failures, and she never gave up. She pushed forward forever, and never let the idea of perfection stop her. We live in a perfectionist society. We all search for that perfect score on tests. Even children fear failure. They know to say, "It wasn't me," when something goes wrong. Now, this isn't because they want somebody else to take the blame for this, or because they don't want to face the consequences of it, but they know that they've been taught to do things right the first time. However, they quickly learn that this is unachievable. What is much more important is that we teach them to learn from their mistakes the first time. And we know that failure is not unavoidable. We must fail. Romans 3:23 says, "All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." And now this is not to say that sin is a failure on our part, but we must understand that we can never be perfect. And this is confirmed in 2 Corinthians 12:9. It says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." By chasing perfection, we not only allow ourselves to be ruined because we are trying to be perfect so hard, but we deny God's grace supplied to us when we could work in unity with Him. Before diving into the causes and effects of our failures, we must first look at what defines a success or failure. I will be defining success as achieving the desired purpose or aim, and failure as any deviation from the desired practices or outcomes. We rarely wake up and decide to act out of complete spontaneity. Our decisions are driven by circumstances. I will use the word territory to refer to the circumstances or situations surrounding our decisions or actions. In general terms, there are 3 main territories that we operate under: novel, consistent, and variable. Consistent territories are in controlled environments where nothing new is happening. This is making a recipe you've made many times or taking the same road to work every day. Odds of failure is low because we understand the systems at place. Next, we have novel territories. They are new and exciting. It is making a new recipe or trying a new hobby. We know that we're not going to get things right the first time, and yet we continue to push forward and fail and learn from it. Between novel and consistent territories, we have variable ones. Variable territories occur when we understand the systems at place, however, complications are arising that shift our perspective on it. This is like a hospital. Doctors know how to fix patients, but complications arise and vary from patient to patient, and they have to continue learning as they go. In my research on this topic, I read Amy C. Edmondson's Right Kind of Wrong, The Science of Failing Well. She has compiled years of research to understand how different failures affect different people and how we should perceive them. She writes about how failures can be placed into one of three categories: basic, complex, and intelligent. In August of 2011, 3 Citibank employees accidentally transferred $900 million instead of the $8 million requested. They had no way of getting this money back. This was a simple mistake that easily could have been prevented, but their negligence led to a failure. Like I said, they wished to get the money back, but they couldn't. This is a basic failure. Basic failures occur exclusively in consistent territories. We understand the systems at place, however, our negligence leads to us messing it up. We understand how to deal with these systems, yet we believe that we could do it in our sleep, and we mess up simply because we don't pay attention. The only way to reduce neglect and prevent basic failures is to consistently pay attention to what's happening. We must make sure that we understand the rules and practices in place and can reduce simple basic failures. Secondly, complex failures are the most catastrophic and easiest type of failures to avoid. Complex failures occur when a multitude of basic failures occur within the same system over time. This leads to a mega failure. On February 1st, 2003, the Columbia orbiter broke apart while trying to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. All 7 astronauts inside were killed. This occurred because when the rocket ship took off, a piece of insulated foam fell off of the exterior of the rocket ship. Crew members noticed this, however, they decided not to do anything about it. This is called an ambiguous threat. Ambiguous threats occur because we know that it could be something, however, it might not be anything. We understand that our car will probably take us all the way to work or school. However, what if you do not have enough gas? What if your engine needs maintenance and you don't do anything about it? We must consistently check the systems at place and make sure that the little things are always going right to avoid complex failures. By limiting ambiguous threats, we can completely reduce complex failures. The final and most praiseworthy type of failures are intelligent ones. Intelligent failures occur in novel and variable territories and involve an intentional pursuit of knowledge and new understanding. When we try new things, we understand that it won't go right the first time. Because we're trying new things, we know that we have to fail to succeed. Sometimes we do this without trying, like making a new recipe or trying a new hobby. We understand that there is a certain degree of failure that is to be expected. And the simplest way to look at this, we are taught from a young age. The scientific method is explored in all levels of science. It involves a hypothesis and experiments to see whether the hypothesis is correct. If these brilliant scientists do not expect to be right on the first time, why can we? They understand that their hypothesis is going to be incorrect, and it's going to take years of trying to correct it and prove what we initially believed. This year in economics, we studied profits and losses. Companies learn so much more from their losses because it shows them what they should do better going forward. And they don't have to change their profits because their losses teach them what they can try new because they've already lost there. No matter how big or small, a failure can be shifted into a good thing as long as the individual learns from it. This is an intelligent failure. To fail well, we must apply a concept called framing. Framing takes intention and self-awareness. It can make or break your journey of failing well. Framing is the mental picture that we have of our failures. It is a decision to see something beyond a simple action. Framing is asking what caused someone to act or yourself to act and looking at the causes and effects of this. If you are trying something new and fail, as long as you learn from it, then you can continue pushing forward with this new knowledge and information. But if you make a mistake in a field that you are familiar in, such as backing your vehicle into a pole, that must be seen as a basic failure that should not be repeated. Reframing failures requires 2 key traits: willingness and resilience. If you are not willing to look at what went wrong, then you can never gain true understanding because you lack self-awareness and intention within your actions. Resilience allows the individual to separate their actions from their value as a person. Framing comes when these two things are done wrong. If you take one of your minor failures and try to brush it off, not only have you failed at failing well, but you limit your ability to fail well going forward. It teaches you not to look at things correctly and to not be self-aware. In my research on this topic, I conducted an interview with Judge Leah Robertson. She offered thoughts from the perspective of winning and losing within the courtroom. When I asked her if it was easier to learn things when things go right or wrong, when you win or lose, she said that when you lose, we have a tendency to reflect. It forces you to ask yourself, why did I fail? What should I do differently going forward? We have a tendency to reflect when we face failures. But when things go right, we pat ourselves on the back and move forward without any evaluation of what went well. When I asked her about situational awareness, she said that it changes from person to person. Some people walk into a room and understand what's going on. They know who to talk to and what to talk about. But for others, this must be taught. And there's not a right or wrong side of this, but we must understand that when we walk into a room, we should understand the systems at hand. In 2019, the Nature Journal did a special edition for their 150th anniversary. Dash and Wayne conducted a study titled, Quantifying the Dynamics of Failure Across Science, Startups, and Security. He spent time studying what makes certain individuals succeed while others continue to fail over and over again. Many of the biggest success stories began with failure. Henry Ford went fully bankrupt before starting the Ford Motor Vehicles. J.K. Rowling was rejected 12 times before Harry Potter was published. And as many of us know, Thomas Edison failed his light bulb over 1,000 times before getting it right. These people knew that they had something worthwhile. They simply had to fight to make it work. Once we can learn to classify our failures into one of the three categories, we can begin to apply that to future decision making. We achieve this by understanding context and systems. Situational awareness is a part of failure that calls for an understanding of situations in both its context and potential outcomes. In Rhetoric 1, we read Servant Leadership by David Kunert. The book explores action and how to properly live a life with others in the forefront. One section of the book explores decision-making and learning from your actions. He describes two different thought processes: feel, act, think, and feel, think, act. We are so naturally pulled towards this feel, act, think mindset. Our emotions hold so much power over us, and they can allow us to act poorly. However, once we shift to the feel, think, act mindset, we can evaluate what's going on and live a life of acting, learning, and adjusting based on your failures. This is what good failure requires. Before planning, we must ask ourselves two simple questions. Who or what else might be affected by this action? And what additional consequences might this action have for myself or others in the future? By asking yourself these two questions, you will not only have a greater understanding of a situation, but you will gain a sense of selflessness that comes with intentionally looking for others. In conclusion, we can use analysis to learn from our past failures and learn to apply them to future decision-making. Classification of our failures can lead us to a greater understanding of how we should act in all of our endeavors. Once we can free ourselves of society's fear of failure, we can learn to be patient with one another. We can help one another better and build on every single failure. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 21:5, "The plans of the diligent certainly lead to advantage, but everyone who is in a hurry certainly comes to poverty." Have a plan, act with audacity, and fail freely. Thank you.
Good job, Cody. How does it feel to be done with that part?
Great.
Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's start with, the big question. What are your plans for college next year?
Wow, so we're going to start out with a failure, aren't we? All right, so I'm going to be at UTPB for 1 year, and then I'll be at UT Austin next fall. And I'm going to study economics, and then I'm planning on going to law school.
Okay, let's see. Is success the opposite of failure?
I don't think so. I think that we can fail in our path to success, and success almost requires failure in a lot of aspects.
So whenever I was coming up with this question, I realized that Coca-Cola was actually created as a prescription medication. And then popsicles were also kind of like a failure by a little child, but still. So yes, we can have failure and success to create. Are all failures preventable?
I don't think so, because we talk about these intelligent and complex failures, and a lot of those occur because it's not because we lack an understanding of a system, but because we fail, or the basic failures are because we fail to pay attention. However, these intelligent failures that occur in novel territories where we're learning something new and chasing something new, I think we should want to fail and that we should chase that going forward.
Good. So you believe that we shouldn't be scared to fail, and in the sense almost be open to failing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Because we can learn from our failures. Good. So you opened up with, wow, we're going to start with a failure, right? So is that your biggest failure so far, or what has been your biggest failure?
I think when I opened that email to see that I wasn't rejected, but I was offered an alternate plan, it felt like a big failure. But one big thing that my family talks about, we have this phrase that we found online somewhere, and it says, run to chase the bus and pray to catch the bus. And if you don't catch it, it's not your bus. So I think you just got to push to that success. And if it doesn't work out, then it wasn't your bus. And you just got to act, learn, and adjust going forward.
Okay. Something we got rid of in your speech. Let's talk about a way you failed forward.
All right. So this was in my paper, but not in my speech. Last fall, I took my SAT for the first time and once I got my results, I felt like I had failed to begin with. And then I decided to continue pushing forward. I did a 40-hour prep course, and after that I took it again and didn't even achieve half of the score that was promised to me, and I felt like I had flopped even more. And then after that, my parents encouraged me to try one more time, so I did more prep, and then I got the score that I was looking for. And I think that experience kind of taught me the willingness and resilience to just keep pushing forward and keep learning.
Do you have any advice for underclassmen or anyone here on failing forward?
Yeah, so I think the biggest place that we can learn that is in our testing, in math and science specifically, because we have that benchmark that if you don't score a certain grade, then you get to retake the test. And I think it feels like a punishment a lot of the time. But when we get to retake a test, it allows us a chance to really learn the material and try again with the teacher. Like, you work with that tutor, and they want you to succeed. So I think just learning that they have your best interest at heart really teaches you to fail with others in the forefront and allow yourself that freedom to continue pushing forward.
How do you keep from feeling, like a failure after you do something? And how do you, get yourself and pick yourself back up?
I think it comes from understanding the systems that you're in, and if it is a basic failure, like in the fall I backed my truck into a pole, and that I felt like a failure at that point, but I just had to understand that it could have been prevented, and I just have to drive safer going forward. But you have to allow yourself the freedom to continue pushing and continue fighting.
Okay, so you are a softball coach, right? So how does failure look in that position?
So I think a while back I saw something that said, don't allow, as a coach or as an athlete, don't allow yourself to fail 3 times, make the same mistake 3 times in a row. Because you fail the first time, and that can be an intelligent failure, and you adjust going forward. But then you make the same mistake, and you can continue learning from that. Maybe I made the wrong adjustment, but on that third try, you really don't have the freedom to fail again. Because at that point, you understand what's going on, and it's an active choice to continue failing or making that same mistake.
Okay. So how are you able to help your players in that position as well?
So I found that the biggest thing for me is trying to be intentional ahead of time and making a plan that's going to suit them. Like, I've got some pitchers that respond really well to yelling and some that don't. And you just got to understand who you're working with and be gentle with the ones that need it and push them to continue learning from that failure, because Maddie's had bad days before, and I think just taking those bad days and looking at the good of it, like, she's got days where she doesn't throw very hard, but we can always find the good things that go well. And I think just that reframing of your mental picture really changes things there.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to hand it over.
All right, Cody, you started out in your introduction, and you were talking about children and how that fear of failure is almost innate in them, right? And I think, to quote you, said that they're conditioned to do it right the first time, right? So they fear failure. But then I was thinking about, like, little toddlers, they're learning to walk, right? And especially as they're taking their first steps, none of us expect that they're really going to walk, right? And they fall down a lot, and they get back up, and we cheer for them when they get up, and we, nurse them when they fall down. So what do you think changes? Like, how do you get from that to where they're afraid of failing? What do you think happens?
I think that happens once they start to face consequences for their actions, because when a toddler falls down, there's no negative repercussions and they get cheered for or clapped for. And I think at that point they're like, I should keep pushing forward. But as a kid, if you make a mistake or if you hurt somebody else, then you really see that your actions do have consequences and that other people are people too. And I think once that shift happens, you really understand, I need to be more careful.
Okay. So what do you think as parents, which I realize you're not a parent, but you're speaking on failure, what do you think parents could do differently to encourage an attitude in children where they're not afraid to fail?
I feel like really breaking down the consequences of the actions intentionally when things go wrong. Like if kids get into a fight, understand what caused that and what the outcome of that was. Was it hurt feelings? Was it an injury? And just looking at every single thing that goes wrong and then give them a second chance to continue acting well going forward.
Okay, I think that's good. Shifting in another direction, are you familiar with the term inner critic?
I am.
Okay, so maybe our audience isn't familiar with inner critic. Can you give a little bit of a definition?
All right, so we've all got this voice inside our head, and for some of us it's stronger than others, but it's this voice that tells us when we're doing things wrong or if we're doing things well, and it continues to criticize us.
Okay, so it's interesting that you say that everyone has one, and when I looked up the definition just so that I would know one in case you didn't know one, and it said everyone has one, but I don't really think everyone does have one. Maybe they do, and some are stronger than others. What do you battle from your inner critic?
Me personally?
When it comes to failure.
I feel like I'm scared to fail a lot of the time. It's not really after the fact, because I think we realize, me personally, I think I realize that things will go wrong and it happens, but I don't like to make mistakes because I don't like to face repercussions for my actions when things do go wrong. So I think forcing myself to try new things and getting out of my comfort zone really forces that.
Okay. So I hear you saying, there can be repercussions on the outside, like consequences, and then there can also be your inner critic, especially if it's strong, kind of berating you on the inside. So which do you think plays a bigger role in failure?
I think it depends on the person, because if your inner critic is strong, then you're going to be naturally pulled towards kind of slowing down, whether it's for your betterment or your detriment. But I think that for some people, their inner critic isn't as strong, so they've really got to take that time to look at the consequences of their actions, because if they don't, then they're just going to continue acting out of complete spontaneity and hurt themselves and others.
Okay. Well, kind of thinking about that and your experience doing teen court, share a little bit with those who don't know, what is teen court and how'd you get involved and what do you do for them?
Yes, ma'am. So I've been in teen court since 7th grade, and we provide an alternative system of justice for second chances for kids who make mistakes. So this is Class C misdemeanors, little stuff like stealing, getting into fights at school, lots of tobacco cases here lately. But I think giving these kids a second chance where they face the consequences of their actions, but it's not a permanent thing. It takes it off of their record and gives them the opportunity to do service hours and help others to pay back for their mistakes. And I think it teaches them that their actions do have consequences. And I've gotten the opportunity to help kids that I don't think made too much of a mistake continue to learn from it. But there are cases where maximum sentence is needed and sometimes even further punishment. But it just allows them a chance to learn from their actions and continue going forward without that mark on their record.
Okay, so do you feel like, maybe we'll separate out teen court from the judicial system, but do you think that teen court has a system in place that handles failure and success well?
I do think so. We don't have a lot of kids come back, and the ones that do usually make the same mistake. So I almost feel like they lack that inner critic that we've talked about. But a lot of the time they don't come back because there's been this outside punishment. They realize that their actions do have consequences, and it forces them to slow down and just understand what's going on.
Okay. Okay, shifting gears a little bit more, and Sienna talked about this a little bit this morning about perfectionism, and I think perfectionism plays into this conversation about failure and success. So thinking about our education system, we'll be more specific to, we'll just say the American education system, maybe not specifically to MCA. How do you think the American education system defines success and failure?
I think success is passing a test, whether that's the STAR test or doing well on your SAT, just doing well enough to continue getting by, go on to college, and then pass college and get a job. But I think that when we slow down, and like at MCA, I failed my first test in physics with you, and that was a really tough pill to swallow. But just understanding that it's okay to fail, and right. It's not about getting to the next step, it's about growing through every single step in the road.
Right. So you talked about it a little bit, but did your view on success and failure change as a senior assistant in algebra versus as a student in math and science classes?
Yeah, I think so, because a lot of times as a student, you feel like your teacher's against you, and you feel like it's your job to prove them wrong, but Miss Gomez and I have spent a lot of time looking out for the good of our kids. Like, I try to grade as fast as I can, and I often give a little bit more revision credit than maybe is necessary, but I just want the students to do well, and I find that as long as they put in the effort, they deserve some sort of reward.
Okay. So what do you think as educators that we could do going forward to help students learn how to fail forward better?
I think the goal should be pushing them forward towards greatness, not just passing. Helping people tap into their full potential. And obviously that ceiling's different for everyone, but I think pushing everybody towards their best is going to be the best solution.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to you.
All right, Cody, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
All right, we're getting close.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're familiar with the story of Mary and Martha?
Yes, sir.
Right, okay. And so I heard that you maybe wanted, it's not in your speech, but maybe you're interested in sharing. So what would you consider in this whole idea of failure? How does that play in with the story of Mary and Martha?
So it's Martha, right, that wants to please Jesus constantly?
Yes, like
right.
but she wants to through serving.
Yes,
right?
sir.
Okay, yeah.
And I think she chases this perfection and doesn't allow herself the time to evaluate what that effect is on herself or for Jesus. Because Mary just knows that she needs to sit down and sit with him and take a break and not force herself to be perfect. And I think that can happen to us a lot of the time. We need to please others and we need to please God. But just sitting with him and slowing everything down, I think will take us away from fear of doing things wrong and fear of slowing down.
Okay. So if you were to sit down with Martha over coffee, what counsel would you give her?
Well, I think I'm pretty similar to Martha, so maybe we could work together to slow down.
That's fair.
But I think just telling her that it's going to be okay. Like, things don't have to be perfect, and through using the failures or shortcomings, we can work together and just understand each other a little bit better.
Okay, good. So you're a very serious-minded guy,
yes,
you know, and so like you always say hi walking across campus. You've done that for years, which I've always appreciated. But you look like you're under pressure
right now.
Just in general,
yeah.
Right? In general. So like, what kind of things make you laugh? What kind of things are just you can feel like you can relax? That you can share with this group. I don't know, because there's murmuring back there. So.
We like to send each other Instagram reels.
Okay.
And I just
okay, yeah.
Like, I think I probably get 25 or 30 notifications from that a day from the people sitting over there.
Okay.
But that's something, and then just going back and quoting those little things that make us happy. I think consistently just going back to those same jokes makes me pretty happy and just makes me calm. I also like to go to the movies.
Okay, very good. Okay, so you do have some fun time. You're not always
yes, sir.
on, right? Because I see you up here, and you're mostly like your business mode.
Yes, sir.
I'm glad to know there's some fun there. Okay, so is it okay ever to feel like a failure? Like, is it ever right to feel like a failure?
I think it is because, biblically speaking, like, I think there was a point where Paul realized that he was a failure. When he was Saul, he did a lot of things wrong, and he kind of hit that point where he realized that everything that he did was wrong. Mm-hmm. And I do think that there's that point where you failed so many times that you just got to change your mindset and continue pushing forward. But I don't think that if you constantly feel like a success, then that's going to seep in and you're never going to be okay with failing.
Okay. Oh, that's good. So let's talk about Paul for a minute then. How do you think he got past that? Like, how do you think that he did a lot of bad things before knowing Christ? How did he not carry that with him the whole rest of the time and like, I shouldn't have done that? What do you think changed?
Well, I think he repented, and a lot of that came through working with the Lord in that. But I think at a certain point you just have to understand, like, what's done is done and continue working towards the goodness that you can provide to the world. But by constantly allowing that to beat up on yourself, you're never going to allow yourself to succeed fully going forward.
Okay, good. So we talked about, there's a lot of talk about perfectionism, right? What's the difference between like perfectionism and a desire for perfection?
I think that perfectionism comes from a selfish desire to be the best. I find myself really pushing not to do great, but to be the best. And chasing that perfect score has ultimately led to me feeling not enough. But I think once you can slow down and just push towards the best that you can do through the work and resilience that it takes, it allows you to slow yourself down and just understand that things are going to work out without it having to be perfect.
Okay. Do you think it's wrong to desire perfection?
No, I don't.
Okay. Where do you think that desire comes from?
I think that desire comes from our fallen nature. Like, since the beginning, we haven't been able to reach perfection, but we know that it once was available to us, and we know that we'll reach it eventually, but it just takes that time with the Father, and we just have to rely on Him.
Okay, good. We talked a lot about failure here in this, and so how do you differentiate between failure and sin? Like, how do I know something's a failure or something's a sin?
Well, I think that both of them are a little bit innate within us. We have to understand that we can't succeed all the time, and we do have that sin nature, but I think failure can be a good thing, and I think that failure can often be sent by God, and I think that sin comes from the enemy directly, and we understand that sin is being apart from God. So I think that once we see our failures as something from God and just a trial that we have to face, then it allows us to separate those two.
Okay, that's good. So let me see. Go down a little bit. Okay. So why do you think? So if God's perfect, right? Why do you think He doesn't expect perfection from us here on earth?
I think the easy answer to that is that He wants to work with us, and He wants us to allow His perfection, like that verse that I referenced that says, "My power is made perfect in your weakness." We get to work in unity with Him, and I think that He doesn't expect that from us because we just get that chance to continue working to be better through sanctification.
Okay, very good. All right, back to Kiana.
We're back.
It's back. Okay. Listening to some of your answers and some of the questions kind of brought me to the idea of how fear of failure or failure in general can affect relationships with people and also your relationship with God.
I think in friendships and relationships with others, we can be so scared that it's not going to work out that we don't live in the moment and allow ourselves to grow through it. Like, things fall apart a lot of the time, and we just have to be okay with that. But if you're constantly fearing that or fearing failure in general, then it allows us to tear apart from the situation at hand and really limits our ability to grow going forward. And same with the Father. Like, I think obviously that's different because we understand that we get the opportunity to grow with Him. But I think that if you're scared of sinning, like, we shouldn't want to sin, but if you fear that, then you're letting that fear drive your relationship instead of love and joy.
Okay, so I'm not sure if everyone knows your end goal of, all your schooling and everything. So let's let everyone know, what is your end goal?
All right, so I'm going to be an economics major, and then I'm going to, my plan is to go to law school, and I want to be an attorney.
Okay. Law school, I hear, is pretty challenging. So anticipating this future and the journey you're going to have to take, how can you put this new knowledge of failing forward into action?
I think understanding that once I've done everything that I can to succeed, if it doesn't work out, then it just wasn't, if something specific doesn't work out, then it just wasn't meant to be. And it's in my power to make it work out going forward.
Okay, let's see. What do you want your legacy at MCA to be?
I think that I want to be known as someone who was intentional with their relationships, and any interaction that I had made others feel valued. And I think I've really put an effort into that this year. Like Mr. Westfall talked about me saying hi to people, and I try to say good morning to as many students as I can.
I definitely think you do that. All right, so she kind of talks about perfectionism. I can't remember if you asked about how that looked at MCA or
I did.
as a culture, but let's ask, do you think that MCA has a culture that kind of cultivates perfectionism in a way?
I think it is if the individual allows it to be. Like, for me, a long time I was scared of failing. Like, we have that 85 benchmark to pass, and in a lot of senses that can come as you have to be perfect to succeed. But once you realize that through doing revisions you can fail, you've got that opportunity to fail tests and continue getting better going forward. And when you fail a homework assignment, you can adjust from that. You get the chance to do it all over again for as much credit as you need to pass. So you really don't have to be perfect the first time.
Good. So thinking about that, what is some advice that you could give the underclassmen who are like looking at failure? They're looking at, I have to be perfect, I have to pass everything. What are we telling them?
I think the biggest piece of advice that I would have is just slow down. Don't push yourself towards perfection, because at that point you'll never be satisfied with yourself. I think it comes to studying as much as you can, or as much as, I don't want to say you want to, because a lot of us don't want to study at all, but studying as much as you have within your ability, I think will allow you to be pleased with the outcome no matter what. And then if you don't get the results that you want, you get the chance to do it all over again. So just trust that process and allow yourself to use it for growth.
Let's see. So do you believe that all failures have consequences?
No, I don't think so, because I feel like I've failed to finish books before that I want to read on my own. Like if you're doing something for fun in these novel territories and you don't want to gain anything from it, if it truly just is for fun, then you can fail it and there's no consequences of it. You may lose $10, but at that point it's okay.
Okay. Are kids scared of failing or, acting bad just because of consequence, or what? Maybe it's not like a punishment, but what could be consequences that we're scared of?
I think at younger ages there's that fear of consequence, like punishment, but at a certain point you decide to start doing things for yourself. Like in athletics, you want to succeed for yourself, and if the consequence of that action is not reaching your full potential or just not doing good on that day, then we can be upset with it, but we don't have to be punished for it.
Let's see. I had another one. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out how to word it. Do you feel that sometimes failing isn't we're not scared of the consequence? What is it? What is the real fear of failing? What is that look
I think a lot of the time the fear is not being perfect or not being enough for others, because we do have this fear of not being enough and being inadequate in a lot of senses, and I think failure just points to that if you allow it to.
Okay. So it's just kind of like a culture we've created.
I think so, and whether it's innate and I don't think that it's innate within us, but culture, and we allow ourselves to feel that way in a lot of senses.
Okay. I guess we'll hand it over to you and
All right.
see what you have for us.
So I had a couple questions in mind, but I feel like I'm going to stick with the one that all three of you probably expected. What is your favorite Taylor Swift song?
I'm going to respectfully ask for a different question.
All right, I can make that happen. I've got a backup, don't worry.
So luckily you gave me time to prep for this. I did have to go draw some inspiration from Mr. Goodart, I don't know if y'all know, but he also loves Taylor Swift. And so I was thinking about it, and my favorite Taylor Swift is, Dead Taylor. Old country. I know. But I just love songs that I can just scream in the car. So I Knew You Were Trouble, We're Never Getting Back Together, Love Story.
The classics.
Now Love Story is just, it's kind of overplayed, and it's a big production now, but it's fun. And then, if I'm wanting something softer and sweeter, probably Enchanted.
There you go.
Would you like to go next?
No, I don't want to go down.
That's okay.
He's not a Swift, you can tell. Okay, I feel like you gave me a lot of time to prep for this, because you asked me this when you were a sophomore. And we were in class, and I do think it took me probably a week to get back to you, and I had to really think about it. And I'm going to hold to, even though she's, I think, released at least probably five albums since you were a sophomore, maybe?
I think so.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know when full. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to stick with my oldie but goodie. Exile is my favorite. I heard your mom's favorite too. I like On Ivor. I like just the sound. I like the whole song. So that's my favorite. You may have to give him a different question.
I've got one.
We have time for a different question.
All right, Mr. Westfall.
Before you ask me that question, I'll give you my two Taylor Swift songs that are serviceable for me. Love Story, of course, but just because of how it gets acted out at MCA dances. Yeah, and then Shake It Off.
Okay.
So,
That's my piece.
well, opposites attract, I guess.
Do you have a mood for that one?
What's that?
Do you have a move for that one?
I do have a mood for it.
Do you shake it off?
Oh, not in public. Yeah.
All right, so I find that one of the easiest questions for me to ask when I'm trying to get into conversation with someone is, what's your favorite color? I just think it's an easy gateway into kind of how people think, so I'll ask you that one.
Okay, my favorite color, I would say blue.
It's a good one.
Yeah, and the end. No, I would say blue. I mean, I really think it's something that I see in nature, and like two of my favorite things. Like I love being outside, and so like the blue sky, but then also the ocean.
Yeah.
I really love, and so I think there's a lot of blue, and I think even for me, like when I think of heaven, I think of blue, and
Yeah.
so yeah, blue's a good color.
I like it.
All right.
Do you want to close this in prayer?
Okay, sure. Well, just a second.
Oh, sorry.
Not yet. I just want to say, thanks for inviting me to be on this panel. You've done a good job. You definitely have been a joy to be around
I appreciate
at MCA. And so I look forward to your future, even though you are going to Texas, which pains me. But I think you're going to do well, and so I look forward to hearing.
Thank you.
All right, let's pray. Father, thank you for Cody. Thank you for this time for us to get together. Thank you for the things he shared. And Lord, I pray for his heart, and that as he continues to mature and grow in you, that he would have a peace in you and be settled in you. I pray for just rest that he needs. And thank you for all that he has brought, the value he's brought to MCA. I pray that he would know that he'll be missed. Lord, but as you open up this next chapter for him, I pray that you would give him good friends, that you would lead and guide him, that he would draw closer to you, and that you would just keep on opening those doors for him. Let's pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.